A sudden knock interrupted my thoughts. My first reaction was that Gary was back, but after everything that happened tonight, it was impossible for me to relax so easily. I quickly walked to the peephole to confirm who it was. I didn't expect a pair of brownish eyes to be staring directly at me. A chill shot through my whole body. "Gary," I whispered to myself. It looked like him, but something deep inside me refused to believe it. "Open the door, it's me." Gary's familiar voice came through the door, perfectly normal sounding. But my feet instinctively stepped back. Gary had always spoken politely, never using a commanding tone. But this time, the way he spoke made me deeply uncomfortable. Maybe I was overthinking. But what if I wasn't? I grabbed the walkie-talkie to confirm his identity. The voice that came through the device was identical to the one outside. "Open the door, it's me." Same tone, same intonation. Even the tiny pauses were perfectly replicated, like a voice recorder. My heart pounded violently. My throat felt blocked, unable to form a sound. The knocking outside intensified, urgent, forceful, like the roar of a wild animal. I realized something. The bear might have evolved after devouring people. The walkie-talkie could no longer be trusted. I pulled out my phone to contact Gary, and when I unlocked it, my heart nearly stopped. I had been kicked out of the owners group, and Gary's WhatsApp messages were all unread. No reply at all. Cold sweat slid down my forehead. Suddenly, a terrifying thought flashed through my mind. Mrs. Wilson. I quickly messaged her, asking if she could help me add me back into the group. She replied soon, but what she said chilled me to the bone. I didn't create that group. After the conflict between the property office and the residents, a man named James created it. I was kicked out long ago. At that exact moment, the knocking outside stopped. I pressed my body against the door, a wave of extreme fear rising in my chest. The bear seemed to have heard something too. Through the peephole, I faintly saw a person and a bear moving toward Building 13. Suddenly, my mind snapped to James's waist earlier in the video. Wasn't that Gary's walkie-talkie? Everything connected in an instant. The Gary messaging me earlier had never been Gary. Gary was likely already dead. And James' plan was to use the bear to trick me into opening the door to eliminate me, the witness. I immediately scrolled through the group's chat history, replaying all the videos. Then I realized a horrifying truth. 13 was never a random unit. James was the resident who lost his wife and child in the fire years ago, and that home was Unit 13. I took a deep breath and let out a bitter laugh. Tonight was truly a chain of horrors. Gary's sacrifice made me feel responsible. I had to stop more people from getting hurt. I clenched my fists. I couldn't let Gary die for nothing. I finally mustered the courage to open my door. The snowy night was silent. The homes around me glowed warmly, as if everything was normal. If not for the horrors tonight, the scene would have looked peaceful. But the unease swelling in my chest told me danger was close. When I looked up, I suddenly saw a shadow at the window of Unit 25, coldly staring right at me. My heart raced, my spine chilled, but I shouted with all the strength I had left, cupping my hands like a trumpet. "There's a bear in the building! The man in 25 has already been eaten! Everyone, listen! Don't open your doors! Don't open them! Don't open them! My throat tore from shouting, but the building's thick glass and heavy snow muffled everything. Most residents couldn't hear a thing. A few eventually opened their windows when they saw me waving like a madman. Through the wind and snow, they finally heard my warning. Soon, screams erupted inside the building, fear sweeping through it like a flood. They must have seen the blood leaking from the windows of 25, maybe even glimpsed the mangled corpse inside. Screams echoed everywhere. I let out a sigh of relief. At least the residents could warn each other now. At least fewer people would get eaten. I was about to turn back when a sudden realization hit me. Where was the bear? Panicking, I looked up at the third floor. The balcony window was wide open. Only deep, pitch-black darkness remained. At that moment, my walkie-talkie crackled. A cold voice whispered, "My baby has been craving you for a long time. I taught it that anyone near windows at night is delicious food." My heart dropped. I stumbled back and crashed into something thick, heavy, and covered in warm, sticky fur. Hot saliva dripped on my head, sliding down with a foul stench. "Open the door! It's me!" It spoke in Gary's voice, eerily calm. Cold sweat poured down my face. I turned my head and saw something I will never forget. The bear's face was shedding its fur, revealing a grotesque human-like skin beneath. Its brows twitched with disturbingly human expressions, yet the gaping, bloody jaws remained wide open. A foul gust of hot air rushed toward me, as if my entire head were already inside its throat. Whoosh! Suddenly, the bear's body shuddered. A low roar escaped its throat. One anesthetic dart after another shot through the air, burying into its thick hide. The bear froze, lifting its head slowly, staring around. In its deep brown pupils was something frighteningly human. At that moment, it was no longer merely a beast, but a hunter with intelligence. Normally, a bloodthirsty bear would have torn me apart without hesitation, but it made an unexpected choice. It abruptly abandoned attacking me and turned, sprinting into the shadowed-covered area. As the bear fled, a group of people in uniforms appeared from behind the building. At the front, surprisingly, it was Mr. Liu. With one command, the team armed with tranquilizer guns gave chase. Mr. Liu glanced lazily at me, waving his hand carelessly. "Security, come over. We need to find someone." I knew exactly who he was after. James, the resident of Unit 13. He'd clearly been briefed by Miss Wilson about what happened in the neighborhood, and specifically hired people to catch the bear. Mr. Liu still had several developments in progress. If a bear-caused death occurred in the community, all the money he had invested and his future projects would be ruined. More importantly, he needed the situation resolved before the police arrived. Otherwise, there'd be no way to control the fallout. Although I didn't have a high opinion of Mr. Liu, our interests aligned at this moment. I followed him toward Unit 25. The moment I stepped inside, the scene made my stomach turn. The brutal, bloody carnage before me would haunt my nightmares. As for James, he was already gone. He'd clearly escaped long ago. I suggested checking the surveillance room, but Mr. Liu waved me off calmly. He casually communicated with the bear-capturing team through a walkie-talkie while leisurely brewing tea in Unit 25. He even asked me casually, "Want a cup?" Surrounded by such carnage, all I could do was shake my head frantically, trying to suppress the churning in my throat. I couldn't believe someone could remain so calm in this environment. Just as I wondered how Mr. Liu could drink tea so composed, the slightly ajar door of Unit 25 creaked open. And then Gary appeared. In his hands, he was holding none other than James. I froze. Gary cast me a glance tinged with awkwardness before quickly averting his eyes. "Mr. Liu, I've brought him. Everything you asked me to do, it's done. Can we settle the final payment?" His words were straightforward, yet carried a subtle restraint. Final payment? My mind went blank. How much had Gary been hiding from me? The joy I had felt seeing him alive instantly turned into icy confusion. Mr. Liu jessically glanced at Gary with disdain, finger still playing with his teacup as if mocking him. Gary's expression was awkward, but James, pressed under Gary's grip, sneered, "You fool! Working for the businessman, and you won't even get the final payment! Dumb as hell!" Before he could finish, a thick strip of tape was forced over his mouth, cutting him off completely. At that moment, Mr. Liu's walkie-talkie buzzed. "Bear secured!" Finally, a triumphant smile spread across Mr. Liu's face. "Let's go! Everyone, come and take a look!" He threw Gary a pointed glance, with "you too." Suddenly, it all clicked. Mr. Liu's previous calm was a deliberate reserve. He clearly had some deal with Gary, but to prevent any accidents, he kept both of us around. He understood that the bear had developed awareness. If something went wrong, Gary and I could help control James. The bear was dangerous, but to Gary, a familiar person, it still retained some attachment. I thought Mr. Liu was overthinking. No matter how clever the bear was, it couldn't resist so many tranquilizer darts. Gary, for the sake of the final payment, would see this through to the end. As for me, although I resented the secrets Gary had kept, I also wanted to see the bear captured with my own eyes, to give the residents some closure. On the way to the underground garage, I couldn't suppress my anger, questioning Gary. "Why had you hidden things from me?" Gary's face flickered with guilt, but he merely said, "James almost killed me back then. I only survived because James didn't want to dispose of my body and tossed me into the bear's cage." I felt a chill crawl through my spine. I was about to probe further, but Gary suddenly went silent. James, mouth-caped, could only emit muffled noises. Mr. Liu said nothing, fully immersed in the walkie-talkie frequencies. As my anxiety built, Gary leaned close to me and whispered, "In a little while, you'll understand everything." Before I could respond, the elevator doors slid open. Cold air from the garage hit us. We hadn't walked far when a massive figure appeared in the distance, draped in a thick mink coat, waving at us. "Mr. Liu, over here!" Instinctively, a sense of wrongness prickled my nerves. I couldn't explain why, but my gut was screaming. Suddenly, Gary grabbed my arm firmly, and a trace of cold malice shone in his eyes. A mental image flashed in my mind. The way the figure waved mirrored exactly how I had seen the bear swipe its paw outside the security booth. A shiver shot from my spine to the top of my head. Could it be that the bear had wiped out the entire capture team? But if Gary knew it was the bear, why was he only holding me back and not Mr. Liu? Shouldn't he be protecting his patron? Mr. Liu was oblivious, happily striding toward the large figure. Suddenly, that figure leapt onto Mr. Liu's shoulders. His face went pale, as if shocked by electricity, frozen stiff. As it turned, I finally saw clearly it was no longer human. The bear's claws and bloody jaws remained, its body mingled with human contours. This thing was no longer purely bear or man. It was a hybrid. Mr. Liu tried to flee, but the bear grabbed him, its immense strength giving him no chance to escape. In desperation, Mr. Liu shouted hoarsely, "Gary, what are you doing? Go get James! This bastard knows you've got his leverage. You threaten him, and he won't dare touch me. Hurry, damn it!" Hearing Mr. Liu's pleas, Gary suddenly revealed a strange, eerie smile. His laugh sent chills down my spine. He spoke deliberately, with slow, controlled words. "Mr. Liu, I wonder, do you still remember the name David?" Mr. Liu's expression froze instantly. His finger trembled as it pointed at the dead leaves fluttering in the autumn wind, gesturing toward Gary. Stammering, he managed to say, "It's you? You went to such lengths for today's scheme?" Gary raised an eyebrow and let out a cold laugh. "Mr. Liu, your efforts don't compare. Back then, to cover up the truth of the fire, you didn't even hesitate to hire people to kill. What I've done is nothing compared to that." Mr. Liu's face went pale, tension written all over him. Suddenly, he switched tone, begging, "All right, fine. I admit defeat. Just let me go. I'll pay 10 times, 20 times, anything." Gary shook his head coldly, his voice like ice, suffocating. "Mr. Liu, you are a forgetful man. Have you forgotten that car accident? My wife died, and she was carrying my child." At those words, Mr. Liu's pupils constricted violently. His gaze turned feral. He screamed hysterically, but before he could finish, the bear behind him struck suddenly. With a single bite, it snapped his neck. Crack! Blood spurted like a fountain. Mr. Liu struggled violently, kicking his legs, only accelerating his own blood loss. Spit mixed with blood gushed from his mouth, echoing in the underground garage as an eerily chilling, crunching sound, like death itself, resonating. I barely restrained myself from vomiting, my mind reeling at the horrifying truth unfolding before me and the long-buried secrets of this neighborhood. Rumors said the old property management's negligence led to the fire, with fire lanes blocked and James's family perishing. Others whispered that Gary had been in a car accident, losing his pregnant wife. One resident had casually mentioned that the fire lane problem had already been dealt with, and the true culprit was a Land Rover, owned by Mr. Liu, who had refused calls at the time, leading to the tragedy. I thought it was nonsense, never imagining it was true. As I was reeling from this revelation, James spoke coldly. "That's enough. Let me go." Gary's face showed a hint of guilt as he slowly released his hold on James, patting his shoulder. Then he said something that sent ice through my veins. "You've done your part, Peter. Go return the big one to its cage." I stared at Gary, heart racing, adrenaline surging. A question that appeared in the neighborhood chat flashed in my mind. How could the bear have passed through all the security and been silently delivered to the top floor of Unit 13? Now the answer was clear. Gary had been an inside man. He and James had orchestrated this nightmare. I realized that the previous playing dead was part of their ruse, one outside, luring the bear, the other planted inside. Ultimately, they had led Mr. Liu step by step into a trap. Mr. Liu had killed their loved ones, and they repaid him in the cruelest way imaginable. A chill swept through me. As a witness to this secret, I wondered if I would also die. Seeing my fear, Gary seemed to read my mind. He smiled reassuringly. "Relax, your life is safe. You helped me once, remember? That lady in the water tank, you helped me hide her from the property. To me, that was as good as a life-saving injection." I didn't know whether his words were true. The remnants of Mr. Liu's blood and flesh still clung to his mouth. On the floor, Mr. Liu looked like a deflated balloon, completely hollowed out. James, meanwhile, gently petted the bear's head, as if soothing a massive pet. Despite the blood all over it, it acted adorably in front of him. "Let's go, Peter. It's over," Gary said, gesturing toward the elevator leading to the residential building. I sighed, feeling a bitter mixture of emotions, yet I quickened my pace, eager to leave this hell on earth. Suddenly, a horrifying crack rang through the quiet air. My body froze, gripped by a predatory-like fear. It took me a second to realize the sound wasn't directed at me. My heart pounded like thunder. I cautiously turned, eyes landing on an impossible scene. James! His head had been bitten off by the bear. Blood sprayed like red flowers blooming in the air. My face went pale. The bear had gone mad, but James was its master. Hadn't they been inseparable? Yet now, with James no longer controlling it, the bear's gaze was wild, completely unbalanced between beast and human. Fear surged like a tidal wave. Instinctively, I bolted, my only thought, "Get out! Escape this monster!" When I came to my senses, I was inside the elevator. Cold sweat soaked my back. I pressed against the wall, violently vomiting, trying to purge the horrifying images from my mind. When I calmed slightly, a terrible thought struck. Where was Barry? I looked up sharply. He stood outside the elevator, back to me, slowly walking toward the bear. "Gary, come back! The bear's out of control!" I screamed, desperation and fear in my voice. Even though Gary was no longer the friend I once knew, I still hoped he would survive. But he slowly turned his head, a twisted smile on his face as if he had foreseen everything. His eyes glinted with perverse excitement. "Peter, don't worry. He's already eaten the last person. Now it's time to return my wife and our child in her belly." The elevator door slowly closed. The mechanical hum filled my ears, but my heart still raced uncontrollably. Outside, sirens blared, piercing the night. Police arrived and formed a special task force to deal with the bear. Yet when they searched the basement, apart from torn corpses, no living soul was found. Gary had also disappeared. The property management checked the basement cameras, every camera offline. None of the blood-soaked events had been recorded. Gary seemed to never have existed. The sudden deaths over a dozen residents sparked public outrage. News spread everywhere. Mr. Liu's unsold properties were ignored. Soon, the developer went bankrupt due to debt. The planned plot was snapped up cheaply by a competitor, rebuilt into a new community. And I, the sole surviving witness, remained in the security room. Occasionally, I sent Gary a message on WhatsApp or spoke into the walkie-talkie, but I knew it was futile. Some truths are forever lost. Until one snowy night, streets again blanketed in white, I chatted over the walkie-talkie with a new colleague. For some reason, that night's terrifying memory surfaced. I recounted the events. He asked, "If it were you, who would you hope survives?" A strange, eerie atmosphere hung in the air. I froze for a moment, but answered without hesitation. "Of course, Gary! Who would want that bear to survive? The bear spirit is terrifying, but it was only driven into a dead end by humans. Foolish as he was, he just wanted to please his father." My voice began to tremble, my body instinctively stepping back. Suddenly, a familiar chill swept over me. I looked up toward the window. A blurry figure was slowly approaching me through the snow, waving at me from a distance. In the swirling snow, I couldn't tell if the figure was human or bear. In that instant, my heart seemed to plummet into a bottomless abyss. Then came the question. "So, can you tell me why the bear ate its so-called father too? Even if this beast has attained some kind of spirit, it cannot escape its bloodthirsty, cruel nature, right? Imagine one day you wake up and find yourself controlled by your father, and he injects something into your flesh to paralyze you, just to harvest your gallbladder for someone else to consume. What would you choose? Resistance or submission? I was stunned by the question, unsure how to answer. Recent news reported that Mr. Liu's company had gone bankrupt, with all his properties and assets auctioned off, when comment mentioned that he often meditated and practiced cultivation at home, even attempting alchemy. Some revealed that the day of the fire he parked in the fire lane and ignored calls because he was immersed in his so-called cultivation practices. Meanwhile, Mr. Liu had personally tried to hunt the bear, designing a trap to catch Gary and conspiring with James of Unit 13 to exploit the animal's bond, intending to steal its gall. From Gary's account, I could roughly guess his fate. He had sent me up in the elevator while he went to retrieve the so-called primordial pill of the bear that had attained spirit. This so-called pill was actually the bear's gall. It seems that he had previously used the idea of a primordial pill as a cover for his dealings. Meanwhile, Mr. Liu had personally tried to hunt the bear, designing a trap to catch Gary, and conspiring with James of Unit 13 to exploit the animal's bond, intending to steal its gall. From Gary's account, I could roughly guess his fate. He had sent me up in the elevator while he went to retrieve the so-called primordial pill, most likely when he encountered the bear, which had almost taken on a human form. He was already anesthetized, planning to take its life while it was weak. But he failed. The bear had won against everyone. As my thoughts churned, the walkie-talkie crackled again. So, who do you hope survives? My new colleague slowly emerged from the smoke, suddenly appearing before me. I sprang up, panic coursing through me. In that moment, I finally understood everything. Why Gary's body was never found in the underground garage, and the true meaning behind his eerie question.